Hi, I'm Mason. I'm 34, and last Tuesday my younger brother stabbed me in the thigh with a barbecue fork during a family intervention. Yeah. You read that right? It started like most bad ideas in my family do, on a group text thread titled, Brennan blood runs deep, flex biceps, medium light skin tone fire. Yes, the emojis were my mom's doing. No, we've never figured out what the fire was supposed to mean. Anyway, my mom had this bright idea to get the whole family back together, after what she called a rough year, which was her diplomatic way of referring to the fact that my brother Caleb had dropped out of rehab, my sister Jen had moved across the country without telling anyone, and I had accidentally revealed at Thanksgiving that I was filing for divorce from my husband, who none of them knew existed. So yeah, rough year. You can all stay at the lake house, Mom chirped over the phone, like we were a sitcom family and not a barely functioning tangle of adult-sized trauma. I'm not going anywhere near that place unless Caleb's sober, I said flatly, pouring coffee over the only clean shirt I had left because of course I did. He is. She lied with the confidence of a woman who once insisted our uncle's gambling problem was just a fun hobby. 2 weeks clean. 2 weeks isn't sobriety, Mom. That's just a long nap. But somehow, against every ounce of my judgment, I found myself driving up to the lake house 3 days later with a bag of board games, 2 bottles of Cabernet, and a stress headache powerful enough to qualify as a small god. It was supposed to be a weekend of bonding, healing, and starting fresh. It was not supposed to involve emergency stitches and 3 hours in the ER with my pants around my knees while Caleb tried to argue that I provoked him emotionally. To be fair, I kind of did. Because this wasn't just a family gathering. It was the day I finally told them everything. And I wasn't sure if anyone was walking out of that living room unchanged. Not even me. The lake house hadn't changed in 20 years, which is wild, considering how much everything else had. The same chipped deer figurines still lined the mantel. The same sagging couch still smelled like mildew and Axe body spray. The same framed photo of all of us in matching Christmas pajamas. Me with my braces, Caleb mid-eye roll, Jen fake smiling with all the sincerity of a hostage, hung proudly above the fireplace. The minute I stepped through the door, I regretted coming. Moss! My mom screeched from the kitchen, like we were characters in a 90s sitcom. You're here! Come hug me, you beautiful boy. She hugged like someone who thought love could be squeezed into you, like blood from a stone. I let her. Is that wine? She asked, eyeing the bag on my shoulder like it was a crime scene. 1 bottle is for me. 1's for you. I'm not drinking this weekend, she said proudly. We're detoxing. Clean spirits, clean bodies, clean family energy. You've had a mimosa every Christmas morning since 1994. She wagged a finger. This isn't Christmas. This is healing. I braced myself as Caleb rounded the corner from the back porch. He looked surprisingly put together, clean t-shirt, freshly buzzed hair, eyes clear. He was holding a plate of grilled corn and ribs and smiling like we hadn't last spoken via a string of very colorful text messages that ended with me telling him he was a manipulative sociopath. Hey big bro, he said, sticking out a hand like we were coworkers. Don't call me that, I muttered, ignoring the handshake. He gave a slow nod like okay, we're doing that, and walked off, chomping on a rib like it owed him money. Jen was late, as always. She breezed in around 6 p.m., with a huge duffel bag and a golden retriever I'd never seen before. This is Benny, she announced. He's a rescue. And emotionally psychic. Psychic? Caleb snorted. He peed on your shoes, didn't he? She said with a deadpan face. That means he sensed something dark in your aura. I think it means you didn't walk him. Or maybe he doesn't trust people who sell their girlfriends jewelry for meth. Okay. Mom clapped, panicking. Let's not do that. Not on the first night. Dinner was ribs and silence. Caleb kept trying to talk about his new business, flipping furniture. Mom kept saying things like, "Isn't it so nice to be together?" while refilling Jen's water glass every time she swore. Jen kept texting someone under the table. Benny the dog kept growling softly at Caleb like he knew something the rest of us didn't. I kept running over the words I needed to say. Because this wasn't just about a family reunion. I hadn't come to make peace. I'd come to break the silence. And by the time Mom pulled out the old box of categories and declared it was time for one of our classic game nights, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might actually beat its way out of my chest. Before we play, I said, standing abruptly, I need to say something. Jen looked up from her phone. Caleb groaned. Mom looked like someone had just told her Jesus wasn't coming back. Here we go, Caleb muttered. The great Mason Brennan monologue. You can shut up or leave, I snapped. He didn't leave. I'm gay, I said. Then I looked directly at my mom. I've been married. To a man. For 3 years. Silence. The kind of silence that eats oxygen. Mom's face twitched like she was trying to smile and faint at the same time. Jen blinked. Caleb just laughed, once. Short and mean. No, you haven't, Mom said finally, her voice trembling. You'd have told us. I tried. 3 years ago. You said you were too busy planning Caleb's intervention to talk. Then you went on that silent yoga retreat. Then the pandemic happened. Then Dad died. I kept waiting for the right time, and it never came. Jen let out a low whistle. I didn't tell you, I continued, because I knew you wouldn't really hear it. You still refer to my high school boyfriend as my theater friend. You made me swear not to tell Grandma about anything alternative. You used to say the gays like it was a contagious disease. I never said that. Mom gasped, scandalized. You absolutely did, Jen said, almost impressed. I didn't tell you I was married because I didn't want you to ruin it. And I didn't tell you we got divorced because I didn't want to deal with the questions. Or worse, the silence. Mom covered her mouth. Her eyes welled up with tears. Why would you think I'd react badly? Because I know you, I said. I grew up watching you ignore the parts of us that made you uncomfortable. You pretend things are fine even when they're on fire. You still haven't said Dad was an alcoholic. You still haven't admitted Caleb robbed Grandma for drug money. You still act like Jen moved away for a job instead of running from all of this. Caleb stood up, his jaw tight. Don't bring me into this, man. You brought yourself, I said. You crashed your car into a Walgreens last year because you thought the security guard was following you. Don't act like you're some moral authority. At least I don't lie to my whole family for years. That's when it happened. Caleb grabbed the barbecue fork off the table. I don't know what he was aiming for, my arm, maybe? Just to scare me? But he lunged. And that's how I ended up with 3 puncture wounds in my thigh and a $400 yard bill. Emotional provocation, Caleb told the nurse later, shrugging like he was describing bad shrimp. And in that moment, sitting in the hospital with a gauze pad strapped to my leg, I realized something. I didn't come to heal the family. I came to walk away from it. The funny thing about getting stabbed by your little brother is that it's both wildly dramatic and completely absurd. Like, yeah, my leg was bleeding. Yeah, I probably should have screamed. But mostly, I was just tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. The paramedics asked me if I wanted to press charges. Mom shrieked. You wouldn't actually press charges against your own brother, would you? Jen, who had silently followed us to the ER and was now chewing on a vending machine granola bar like it was a cigar, looked at me and said, You totally should. I'm not pressing charges, I said, and everyone exhaled like I'd just saved Christmas. But then I added, Yet. Caleb was in the waiting room with a cop and a bandage on his knuckles from punching the porch railing. Apparently, my leg wasn't the only thing he'd attacked after I left. When the officer asked if I wanted to write a statement, I took the clipboard and wrote 3 words. This is enough. Because it was. By the time they wheeled me out, it was 2 a.m. The air was thick with pine and regret. Jen offered to drive me back to the lake house, but I said no. I needed space. I needed oxygen. I needed to sit in my car with the engine off and ask myself what the hell I thought I was doing by coming back to that house full of ghosts. I pulled into a motel on Route 9. The kind with cigarette burns in the comforter and vending machines that only took quarters. I sat on the edge of the bed, leg throbbing, and called the one person who always picked up. David. My ex-husband. He answered on the second ring. Hey, he said, voice groggy. Are you okay? I don't even remember what I said. Something about Caleb, and barbecue forks, and emotional provocation. David listened, quiet and steady. You sound like a guy trying to prove something to people who never wanted to see him, he said. Yeah, I whispered. I think I was. He exhaled. You're not going to fix them, Mason. Not by bleeding for them. Not by getting stabbed for them, literally or metaphorically. Yeah. I got that now. Want me to come get you? That offer almost broke me. No, I said softly. But thank you. We hung up, and I sat there in the flickering light of a busted motel lamp, watching an ant crawl across the cracked laminate nightstand, and I realized I'd been trying to earn something from my family that they were never going to give me. Validation. Acceptance. Hell, maybe even love. Not the conditional kind they gave when I played the good son role. The real stuff. The kind that doesn't disappear when you stop pretending to be someone you're not. The next morning, I limped back to the lake house with a plan. I found Caleb asleep on the couch, snoring like a diesel engine. Jen was outside on the porch with her dog and a cigarette. Mom was in the kitchen making pancakes with raisins, which is a hate crime, frankly. They all looked up when I came in. Morning, I said. You shouldn't be walking, Mom said, flapping around me like a wounded sparrow. You were stabbed, Mason. Yep. And I'm still here, which is kind of the theme of my life. Jen snorted. Listen, I said, raising my voice slightly. I've got something to say. They braced themselves. Even Benny the dog stood at attention. I've spent most of my life trying to make this family like me. Accept me. See me. I've bent myself into shapes that hurt. I came out and got silence. I got married and got nothing. I got divorced and didn't tell you because I knew I'd get less than nothing. Mom opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. No. You don't get to talk yet. Because this is the part where I finally say what I need to say. I looked at Caleb. You're my brother. You were also my bully. You made my life hell growing up, and when you got older, you blamed drugs. Now you're clean, but you're still mean. I'm sorry you're struggling, but I'm not your punching bag. Not anymore. He blinked at me, stunned. Then I turned to Jen. You ran. I get it. I envy you sometimes. But don't pretend like you're above the mess just because you left. You're still part of it. You're just pretending to be a spectator. Jen nodded slowly, her face unreadable. And then, finally, my mom. You say you love us. You say we're your whole world. But love without accountability is just control. You ignore what makes you uncomfortable. You rewrite history every time it gets inconvenient. You say you're proud of me, but you can't even look me in the eye when I talk about my life. Mom was crying now. Real tears. I'm not asking for a parade. I'm not even asking for an apology. I'm just telling you, I'm done performing. I'm done bleeding to keep the peace. I stepped back. Took a breath. I came here hoping to fix something. But maybe the only thing I needed to fix was my expectation that you'll ever be the family I wanted. You're the family I got. And I'm done sacrificing myself to make that okay. No one spoke. Then Benny farted loudly, and Jen burst out laughing. It was so stupid, so perfectly us, that I laughed too. And just like that, the tension cracked. Not vanished, cracked. It was a start. The silence after that speech was the kind of silence you could cut with the same barbecue fork Caleb stabbed me with. Mom wiped her eyes with a paper towel and muttered, Well, that was a lot. Yep, I said, popping a raisin pancake into the trash where it belonged. But honest. Caleb sat slouched on the couch, staring at the floor like it owed him money. Benny the dog wandered over and sniffed my bandaged leg like he was debating whether I needed licking or an exorcism. Jen just lit another cigarette and looked at me through the smoke. So what now? She asked, voice low. We just pretend that didn't happen? Go back to game night and passive-aggressive small talk? I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe we do nothing. Maybe we stop pretending. That would be a start. Mom opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't know you were hurting like that, Mason. Yeah. That's kind of the problem. I thought I was doing my best. You were doing your best for you. Not for us. That landed. Hard. She sat down slowly, like her body had finally caught up to the weight of all the years she spent pretending everything was fine. I didn't know how to be a mom to you, she said, her voice cracking. When your dad left, I shut down. I put all my energy into keeping things together. Routines. Appearances. Making sure no one knew how broken we were. I told myself if I could just make everything look normal, maybe it would feel normal again. That's not parenting, I said. That's damage control. And I was always the mess that messed it up. Caleb added bitterly. No, I said, turning to him. You were a kid with an undiagnosed mood disorder, an addiction problem, and a family too busy patching up the cracks to notice the foundation was crumbling. That's not your fault. But what you did with that pain, the way you took it out on everyone else, that is your responsibility. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I know. It was the first time I'd ever heard him admit anything like that. I don't want to be that guy anymore, he said. I really am trying. I want to believe that. I'll prove it, he said, meeting my eyes. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I am sorry. For everything. For what I said. For what I did. And for what I wasn't when you needed a brother. I couldn't respond. Not right away. The apology hit me in a place I didn't know still had feeling. You stabbed me with a fork, man. Yeah. He winced. I panicked. You triggered something. I went 0 to full gremlin real fast. Triggered something? Jen snorted. Is that what we're calling attempted impalement now? He looked genuinely ashamed. I'm working on it. Anger stuff. In therapy. I swear. Jen blinked. You're in therapy? Caleb shrugged. Court ordered. But turns out, my therapist isn't completely useless. She thinks I've been trying to punish everyone for not noticing I was drowning. Classic Brennan move. I muttered. Sink silently, then get mad no one saved you. Everyone in the room flinched, then laughed. Real, raw, exhausted laughter. It wasn't a breakthrough. It wasn't healing. But it was something. We ended up spending the afternoon on the deck, passing around a box of stale Cheez-Its and arguing about whether Benny was emotionally intuitive or just gassy. I laid on a lounge chair, leg propped up, watching Jen teach Mom how to use Instagram like it was 2012. Caleb grilled more food and only burned one thing. It was peaceful. That night, we had a fire pit going out back. Not for healing. Not for closure. Just because it was cold, and we had marshmallows. I want to show you something, Mom said, rummaging through her purse. She pulled out a stack of old Polaroids. This is you, she said, handing me one. Senior year. The school play. You were amazing. I blinked. You came to that? I did. I sat in the back row. I didn't know how to tell you I was proud. But I was. I am. You could have said that sooner. I'm saying it now. I took the photo. In it, I was in a ridiculous costume, holding a fake sword, grinning like a kid who believed applause could fill the cracks inside him. I didn't cry. But something loosened in my chest. Thanks, I said softly. Jen handed me a marshmallow on a stick. If anyone tries to trauma dump again tonight, I'm stabbing someone with this. Please don't, I muttered. My leg still itches. And just like that, for a moment, we were a family. Not a perfect one. Not a healed one. But maybe, finally, an honest one. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Jen's dog dry heaving by the fireplace and Caleb attempting to make a smoothie with what I could only assume was half a banana, a raw egg, and despair. What the hell is that smell? I groaned, limping into the kitchen. It's health, Caleb said proudly, holding up a glass that looked like it had been scraped off a mossy rock. I'm cleansing my gut biome. Your gut biome deserves to press charges, I said, opening the fridge and gagging at the sight of what might have been leftover ribs or possibly something from 1998. Jen came downstairs wearing a pair of Mom's ancient flannel pajama pants and a hoodie with San Francisco Trauma Response Unit across the chest, sipping black coffee like it owed her child support. Benny followed her, still giving Caleb side-eye like he hadn't forgotten about the stabbing. So, she said, looking at me over the rim of her mug. What now? What do you mean? I asked, trying to scrape the microwave grime off a plate with the corner of a paper towel. I mean, she said, sitting at the table. You did your big truth bomb. You bled on the linoleum. Mom cried. Caleb apologized. Are we supposed to ride off into the sunset now or? I snorted. You think this is a sunset moment? I mean, we're still at the lake house and no one's thrown a plate yet. That feels like a record. Give it an hour. Caleb muttered from the blender. But she wasn't wrong. There was a weird calm. Not peaceful exactly, more like the silence after a storm, when you're not sure if it's really over or just taking a breather. I think, I said slowly, it's not about what happens next. It's about what doesn't happen again. Like getting stabbed? Like pretending we're okay when we're not. Like letting stuff rot because no one wants to deal with the smell. Caleb wandered over and slumped into a chair. I kept expecting you to hit me back, you know? For the fork. I wanted to, I said honestly. But I've spent most of my life reacting to this family. I think I'm finally done doing that. He nodded. I don't want to be that guy anymore. Then stop being him. Jen said bluntly. You act like you don't have a choice. You do. So make a better one. He blinked. Damn. Okay. Therapy, Jen, is terrifying. I contain multitudes, she said, sipping her coffee with menace. Mom joined us a few minutes later, dressed in actual jeans and a cardigan, looking like she was auditioning for the role of functioning mother in a made-for-TV movie. She had a folder in her hands, thick with papers and a nervous energy. I want to show you something, she said, placing the folder on the table. I started therapy last month. Real therapy. Not the podcast kind. Wait, Caleb said, squinting. You didn't start that when you started drinking those green shakes and making vision boards? No, she admitted. That was Pinterest and delusion. This is actual work. She opened the folder and pulled out a sheet. My therapist asked me to write down every time I remember avoiding something that scared me. That's gonna be a long list, Jen muttered. I know, Mom said. That's kind of the point. She flipped to another page. This one's for the things I never said. Like, I'm sorry I let your father hurt you emotionally. Or, I'm sorry I told you to forgive and forget instead of standing up for yourself. Or, I'm sorry I was so focused on appearances that I didn't see you disappearing right in front of me. My throat closed. Caleb stared at his hands. Jen blinked hard and looked away. You're not the only one who's been carrying things, Mom said, voice trembling. I just buried mine under casseroles and denial. That's a lot, I said, my voice hoarse. It's honest, she said. That's our new thing, right? No more pretending. No more silence. We sat there for a long time, the four of us, in that kitchen that had once been a war zone of guilt and passive aggression. And I realized something. We weren't healed. We were haunted. But maybe, for the first time, we were all finally willing to admit we were living in the same haunted house, and maybe, just maybe, we'd started opening the windows. Later that afternoon, Mom suggested we take the old rowboat out on the lake. Caleb looked at her like she'd grown a second head. The boat? He said. That thing's a death trap. It sinks if you sneeze too hard. We'll patch it, she said. Together. It'll be good for us. Therapy boat, Jen said, grabbing her coat. Why not? Let's float our generational trauma into the middle of the lake and maybe just leave it there. Caleb laughed. If that boat sinks, it's a metaphor, right? It's always a metaphor with this family, I muttered. So we patched it. Badly, but with duct tape and hope. And then we paddled out into the freezing water, all four of us, plus Benny, crammed into a wobbly little boat that creaked like it remembered every horrible Christmas we'd ever spent in that house. But we didn't capsize. We floated. And maybe, in a way, that was enough. We made it halfway across the lake before Jen said, deadpan, raise your hand if you think Mom's using this as a metaphor. Caleb raised both hands. Benny barked. Mom rolled her eyes. Maybe I am. But also, I just wanted to get us away from the house and the Wi-Fi and the tendency we all have to emotionally combust within 30 square feet of each other. I combust because I care, Jen said, flicking lake water at her. You combust because you refuse to use inside voices, I muttered. Bite me. Children, Mom warned, but it was soft this time. Almost fond. We are floating. On water. Without swearing or sobbing. Let's not ruin the miracle. The truth was, the miracle wasn't that the boat was still afloat. It was that none of us had stormed off since the night of the fork. We'd had 3 entire days without one person screaming, door slamming, or disappearing into a dramatic silence spiral. It was unheard of. Caleb leaned back, squinting at the sun. It's weird, isn't it? What? I asked. That we're like, okay. Or closer to it than we've ever been. I hesitated. It's temporary. We're floating on duct tape and shared exhaustion. Still, he said. Feels good. Better than drugs, honestly. High praise, Jen said. From the guy who once tried to snort crushed Adderall off a Pop-Tart. Allegedly. No one alleged it. You filmed it. We all laughed, loud and surprised. Mom was smiling so hard I thought her face might cramp. Can I say something? She asked after the laughter faded. Caleb groaned. If it's another group activity, I swear. It's not. She looked at each of us, her voice unsteady. It's just, thank you. For coming. For staying. For not giving up on this. I did give up. I admitted. That's why I came back. To say goodbye. And maybe to burn a few emotional bridges on the way out. And yet, she said, eyes glinting, here you are. In a boat. With your stabby brother, and your psychic sister, and your codependent mother. Don't forget the judgmental dog. Jen added. Benny barked again, perfectly on cue. I'm not promising anything, I said after a pause. Not forgiveness. Not family dinners. Not some big reunion montage with a soundtrack. Good, Mom said, surprising me. Because I'm not asking for a montage. I'm asking for a beginning. And for the first time, that didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like hope. Not the kind she used to weaponize, but the kind you whisper to yourself when you're still scared but trying anyway. We sat in silence for a while, the boat drifting gently. Benny sneezed and nearly tipped us over. Caleb yelped. Jen shouted something about suing Mom for emotional damages. And I just watched the ripples in the water thinking. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not a clean break. Not a perfect fix. But 4 people in a leaky boat, paddling slowly towards something better. We docked the boat around sunset, and for the first time all weekend, nobody rushed back to the house. We just stood there, looking out over the lake like it might spell out our future in ripples and duck poop. Can I ask something? Caleb said, rubbing the back of his neck like he was afraid we'd all vanish if he broke the moment. Unless it's about the time you set the garage on fire trying to deep fry a turkey, I'm listening, Jen said. He ignored her. What happens when we leave here? I knew what he meant. It was the question hanging over all of us. What happens after the Weird Lake weekend, the marshmallow truce, the temporary ceasefire born of exhaustion and a shared fear of drowning? Nothing, I said honestly. And everything. Jen groaned. Okay, Gandalf. No, really, I said, shrugging. We go back to our lives. But maybe we're not dragging all the same baggage this time. Maybe we leave a little of it behind. Caleb nodded slowly. I want to be better. Not just sober. Better. Then be better, I said. Go to your meetings. Stay in therapy. Get a job that doesn't involve flipping haunted Craigslist couches. They were vintage, he muttered. Vintage poltergeists. Jen added. Mom stood beside us, arms crossed against the evening chill. I want to keep doing family therapy. With whoever's willing. I know I can't fix everything, but I want to try. For real this time. No vision boards. Just work. I nodded. I'll come. Maybe once a month. Same, Jen said. But I'm not doing trust falls or candle ceremonies. I never asked you to do those, Mom said. You definitely did in 2007. You burned sage and made us chant. Okay, yes, but that was during my Gwyneth Paltrow phase. We all winced in unison. We headed back to the house as the sky deepened to blue. Mom made grilled cheese. Caleb set the table. Jen showed me a new tattoo on her ankle, an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. Symbol of cycles, she said. But also, kind of how our family eats itself alive and then tries again. Fitting. I thought so. That night, I didn't sleep in my old room. I slept on the couch, legs still sore, Benny curled up by my feet like a judgmental footstool. I dreamed about my wedding. Not the actual day, but the one I'd wanted, the one with everyone there, smiling for real, no secrets, no awkward silences. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. When I woke up, the house was quiet. Jen had already left for her flight. Caleb was snoring. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table with a legal pad, scribbling notes. She looked up as I walked in. Thought you'd be gone by now, she said. Wanted to say goodbye in person. She nodded. Thank you. For coming. For yelling. For not letting me pretend anymore. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't fixed. She wasn't suddenly the mother I'd wanted all these years. But she was showing up now, and maybe that was the most I could ask. I love you, I said. But I'm not moving back into your expectations. Her lip trembled. She nodded. That's fair. I grabbed my bag, gave her a long, tight hug, and stepped out into the morning sun. As I drove away, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I was abandoning anything. I just felt lighter. Like I'd finally set something down I was never meant to carry. 3 weeks later, a small padded envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in Mom's cursive, the kind she used for birthday cards and long-forgotten PDA sign-in sheets. Inside was a flash drive. And a sticky note that read, "Play this when you're ready. I'm still learning. Love, Mom." I stared at it for a full 10 minutes before plugging it into my laptop. The screen lit up with a video, clearly filmed on Mom's phone, a little crooked, her head slightly cut off at the top. She was sitting on the lake house porch in her world's okayest mom sweatshirt, a joke gift from Jen that had aged like wine, looking nervous but steady. "Hi," she said, exhaling. "I'm not great at this whole talking when no one's interrupting me thing. But your therapist said I should try telling you things without expecting anything back. So this is me, telling you things." She paused. Looked off screen like she was searching for courage. I've spent most of my life pretending. Pretending I was fine. Pretending our family wasn't held together by duct tape and denial. Pretending I knew what I was doing. She looked into the camera. And pretending I was okay with you being gay was maybe the worst of all. My stomach clenched. I almost stopped the video. But then she kept going. I was scared. Not of you. Never of you. But scared of how people would treat you. What the world might do. And instead of dealing with that, I smiled and nodded and hoped you wouldn't bring it up again. And I hate that. I hate that you spent so long feeling invisible just to keep me comfortable. She wiped her eyes. I'm trying to be better. Not just in theory. In practice. I go to therapy every week. I listen to podcasts that make me deeply uncomfortable. I finally watched Moonlight and I sobbed through the entire second act. I laughed, loudly and unexpectedly. She smiled. And I'm learning that love isn't silence. Love is witnessing. Love is saying I see you. Fully. And I'm still here. So I'm saying it. I see you, Mason. Gay. Divorced. Brilliant. Hurt. Healing. Mine. Always mine. The screen cut to black. No music. No big finish. Just her face. Honest. Raw. Trying. I sat back, eyes burning. And realized something. For years, I'd built armor over the parts of me she refused to see. I protected those pieces like glass, afraid they'd shatter under her gaze. And now here she was, not just seeing them, but reaching out, palms up, ready to hold them with both hands. Later that night, I sent her a text. That was brave. And beautiful. Thank you, she replied immediately. Are we okay? I stared at those 3 words, feeling their weight. Then I typed back. We're getting there. That weekend, I went on a hike with Caleb. He told me he'd gotten a job as a mechanic's assistant and hadn't missed a single meeting. He didn't apologize again, just showed up, steady and sober, sweating through a trail and talking about nothing. It was the best conversation we'd had in years. Jen called me from an airport in Denver. Just checking to see if we're all still emotionally stable, or if Caleb's reenacting the Revenant with a fork again. I think we're good, I said. For now. I'll believe it when Mom learns to use pronouns in therapy. She's trying. Jen paused. Yeah. We all are. And I realized this wasn't about one weekend. Or one conversation. It was a beginning built on broken things, pieced together slowly, imperfectly. Love, in this family, wasn't neat. But it was real. And finally, that was enough.